Zimmerman with Idahoans for Local Education, and this is Stacy Knutson, also with Idahoans for Local Education. We're here tonight to discuss the opt-out movement from the Smarter Balanced Assessment Consortium and give you some information to help you opt out. You guys can interact with us live simply by typing into the chat box below. Ask us questions and don't be afraid. We're here to help.
We have joined with many other concerned parents in Idaho and across the nation to take a stand to improve education in Idaho. We have watched as parents have been pushed out of the educational arena. Big business and big political egos are driving a standardized educational approach with the idea that a one-size-fits-all test will prepare our children for college and career. There is a movement across the nation to refuse these tests. We have to send a strong message that the current educational reforms are not improving education. More testing does not equal better learning. In Idaho, we are transitioning from the ISAT to the SBAC. This SBAC test will require 2 additional weeks of testing time, further disrupting the classroom. The test itself will require 6 to 8 hours per student to complete. Several of Idaho's superintendents have voiced concerns with the SBAC. They believe it will result in over 1 million hours of instructional time lost in grades 3 through 11 each year. There is zero evidence that the test is superior to the ISAT, yet we are investing huge amounts of time and money that does not get invested in the classroom.
So, what is the SBAC? It is illegal to have a national test. To get around that, the federal government put together Race to the Top assessment, where groups of states came together to compete for money while forming testing consortiums. The products of this competition was the Partnership for Assessment Readiness in College and Career, or PARC, and the Smarter Balanced Assessment Consortium, or SBAC. Idaho belongs to SBAC. Their main goal is to write a test that is specific to Common Core. So why is it important to opt out of the SBAC? And what happens if you don't opt out of the SBAC? This year is the field test. This spring in particular is the field test. That means it is, to quote a friend, a test for a test to test the test, which gives us no scores because we love data for the test, but they won't let you see the test until after next year's test. This year helps validate the SBAC test. This is the year they are gathering the data to determine cut scores. Where are below basic through proficient going to be rated? If the test is validated, it will replace the ISAT. And for whatever problems the ISAT may have had, at least it was written by Idaho teachers. If you don't out of this test, it becomes a standardized test that is used to determine school star ratings and teacher evaluations. So why do you need to opt out? We have a list of knowns and unknowns regarding SBAC. Let's start with what we do know. This is more than just a test to replace the ISAT. They want to drive curriculum and enforce the Common Core standards. The SBAC is the enforcement arm for Common Core. Also, the SBAC is psychometric testing. Psychometric testing is a method used to measure aptitudes, strengths, and weaknesses. These types of tests are frequently used in the corporate world to determine where an individual will fit in a corporate structure. It's profiling. When used on a child, it will funnel them at a young age, possibly 8th grade or younger, into a career path. This is about workforce training much more than it is actually about knowledge. This adds a whole new element to the student rankings of below basic, basic, proficient, and advanced. If your child ranks below basic because they are not a good test taker, what sort of a career will they be funneled into? In the Smarter Balanced Assessment Consortium Memorandum of Understanding with the Federal Department of Education, it is stated that SBAC will give ongoing access to the data to the Federal Department of Education. Notice the wordsmithing. They didn't say they were going to give them the data. They're just going to leave the door open for the Federal Department of Education to access it any time they want to. And this is not going to be aggregate data. This is student-level data, personally identifiable information. More and more, teachers are going to be forced to teach to the test. These are high-stakes tests. Teacher evaluations will be determined by how their students perform on these tests. Bruce Cook from the Madison School District stated that about 3.5 hours of a child's school day are going to be spent dealing with some aspect of Common Core and the test prep. They now have to divert time from other subjects to teach young children typing skills that are going to be needed for taking the test. And children who struggle are being removed from specials like music and PE and those other fun classes that make school exciting to take time to prepare for those tests. Early childhood development experts also agree that adding this sort of pressure to young children is inappropriate and leads to anxiety and depression. That can't be good for a young child's brain development.
So what do we still not know about the SBAC? Although several groups have requested to see an exact cost estimate of the SBAC, we still have not received this information. We have been told that it is cost neutral. It will cost exactly the same as ISAT per student. However, earlier this year, the SBAC coordinator for Idaho sent a letter to superintendents stating, latest cost estimates show that obtaining student-level data, even from as few as 10 items, would be cost prohibitive to the state. Will the cost be going down next year? What do we know about the costs? The SBAC test requires much greater bandwidth and a greater investment in technology. This is the reason that large portions of the educational budgets are focused on technology and internet access over the last few years. If you look at the cost requirements to upgrade all of Idaho schools to meet the SBAC requirements, the claim of cost neutrality loses its credibility. Final data on requirements is still being gathered and communicated to the states. We will not know the full extent of the cost until after the pilot. So what else do we know? The SBAC test has several test items that require hand scoring. This is a cost that we have never faced with ISAT. So we look to Kentucky for an example. Kentucky is a few years ahead of us in implementing a test of this sort. We can learn from this experience. They contracted with ACT to develop their test. It's very similar to the product that SBAC is providing for Idaho. ACT is a tried and tested company with years of testing experience. They found that they were unable to process hand-scored items in a timely manner so that the information was usable by teachers and students. And Kentucky found that they could not afford the cost of hand scoring. They have dropped all hand-scored items from their test and returned to a format very similar to our ISAT. Other problems with the SBAC is that the SBAC is a completely new testing consortium with no business history. They exist only because they received a grant of $350 million given to them by the Department of Education. They were not the best at what they do. They were one of two options we were given if we wanted to qualify for other federal funds. Because of this inexperience, they have run into several problems. During the item review process in fall of 2012, they recognized that their review process for ensuring quality of the items was not sufficient. As a result, they revised the number of items they developed for the pilot test from 10,000 down to 5,000. They claim that they will have 38,000 items ready for this spring test in 2014. Superintendent Luna assured Idahoans that they are fully vetting all test questions and writing prompts to ensure that they are valid, fair, and reliable for Idaho students. The SBAC just announced last week that there will be delays because they are still trying to make certain the right questions are being funneled to the right grade levels. At what point in this process did Idaho vet these questions if the final test is still being manipulated weeks before it is administered to our children?
So, how do you opt out of the test? It's as easy as sending a note into your school exercising your parental rights. We have samples on our website, Idahoans for Local Education, under the tab Opt Out. Also, we are going to be posting some that come from parents that they've used in opting their children out. What are some of the things you're going to hear as you try to opt out your children? You might hear, and you probably will hear, you don't have the choice. So if you hear that, ask to see the policy that states that SBAC is required.
I have with me the document or the actual Idaho statute that talks about why we are required to have testing in Idaho. And it says that a test must meet certain qualifications. I will tell you that SBAC this year meets none of those qualifications. It has said that it has to measure and improve student achievement. We will not be receiving any results from the SBAC this year. That it has to assist in the classroom. There will be no results for teachers or students, and so there will be no assistance provided in the classroom. It has to inform parents and guardians of their child's progress, and the list continues. So the SBAC this year meets none of the requirements that the law is referring to. And so you have the law on your side this year as we opt out of the SBAC. There is nothing in the law that requires you to have your students participate in an unpaid product development for a private company.
So, and the policy doesn't, like she mentioned, doesn't even mention SBAC. It does mention the ISAT, though. You're probably going to get told that if your school doesn't reach the 95% requirement in the No Child Left Behind agreement, that it will lose its star rating. This year, we have received a reprieve from that. The SBAC will have no effect on school ratings. Representative DeMordaunt, chairman of the House Education Committee, stated that parents could keep their children home on the day of the tests. You can do that, but when you add up all the tests and make-up days, that may add up to 2 weeks of lost school. Which is easier for you in the school, to opt your child out or to have them skip school for 2 weeks? This year, the test is an experiment, nothing more. In any other industry, test subjects would be compensated for their time and effort.
Parents, no action at this point is taking action. It is saying you are okay with what is happening. You are okay with a continued emphasis on testing rather than learning. Tests have their place, but we have allowed them to become the major factor in deciding pretty much everything in schools: funding, placement, teacher pay, etc. Please take a stand with us. You have the right. Parental rights are broadly protected by the Supreme Court, especially in the area of education. The Supreme Court has repeatedly held that parents possess the fundamental right to direct the upbringing and education of their children. The Supreme Court has criticized state legislators for trying to interfere with the power of parents to control the education of their own. The Supreme Court held that the right of parents to raise their children free from unreasonable state interferences is one of the unwritten liberties protected by the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment. And so we invite you to join with us in opting out of the tests this year.
Okay, let's see. Diego disappeared and we don't have his password to the computer. Give us a minute here. We've got...
And we will answer your
we
questions.
will answer your questions.
They're logged out of the computer.
You should have just given us your password. That would have been easier. All right. Are there any questions on there, Stacy, that we can answer for people?
They would like to know when the webcast will be available later. I believe it will be on our website to rewatch at a future point.
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Okay, is there anything else? I can't read it from that far. The print's too small.
Yeah. Someone asked that Luna is not running for election, and they wonder why. I have my own reason. I could guess, but I don't have any definitive answers. But I would add that when I spoke to Tom Luna about this very thing, and it was a personal conversation, he told me that I do have the right to opt out. Now, the State Department of Education has since come out and said that the policy is that you cannot opt out, but there is no law preventing you from doing this. And we do have the rights as parents to direct the education of our children.
Anything else pop up?
Are there other states where opting out has been successful?
New York right now has a huge opt-out movement taking place. It's called I Refuse, and the 25th they are actually having a huge rally at one of the local schools to gather support and parent. There's strength in numbers, and so they're working together to show one another that they can opt out. They can do this. This is the right thing to do for their children.
How do you suggest we spread the word to our friends? Are there any catchphrases to grab parents' attention?
We're actually working right now on putting a flyer up on the website that you could print, hand out to your friends, put on windshields. It gives the major points, the time that it takes, the psychometric data, the stress that it puts on children. It gives all those points in just, I think it's a quarter-page flyer, so that will be available soon.
And I think to really stress the point that this is not a test that will benefit your child in any way this year. It is really just product development. We have an untested, untried testing company that has never successfully executed a test. They're having problems in every point, and so they're hoping to use the kids all across the nation that are part of this consortium to work out the kinks. And so we don't want that for our kids. We want, and there's been a huge amount of time spent in preparing the kids to take this test that will have no benefit to them. And so really stress that. We want the classroom time to be valuable for our children. How should you deal with faculty hostility when opting out? I can share my own experience with you. I've had several long conversations, and I even had to use the term civil disobedience with the lady that I was working with, and told them that it was simply that I understand the points that she's dealing with, that they have a 95%, that all of the laws that they are trying to meet and deal with. But if we do nothing, and if we just go along to get along, and we make it easy and comfortable for them, then nothing changes. And that's where we're at. We're working hard to change things legislatively, but we have not elected the right people right now that are responding. And so we need to work on getting the right people that will listen to parents elected. And in the meantime, we need to stand up as parents and say, we aren't going to go along with this. So it's not easy. I wish I could tell you that you weren't going to have a bad experience. You may have a bad experience, but it's worth it.
And there is strength in numbers. If you have other friends that are going to be opting out, go together. Make sure you stay pleasant, but also remind the administration that these are your children and you have the right to opt them out. It's a fundamental parental right to direct your children's education, and that you are planning, to direct them away from this test. What else have we got?
Someone has heard that there is a superintendent that actually opted his own children from the test. Is that right?
Yes, the Madison School District, he is the one that actually gave us the form that we use on our website. That is the form that he used to opt his girls out of the test. Now you'll notice he opted his children out of both the SBAC and the ISAT. He doesn't like the computer adaptive testing at all, or the high stakes testing at all, which both the SBAC and the ISAT are. So yes, he has taken the liberty to do that.
And several of the superintendents have been unhappy with the SBAC, and so there is a lot of support, even among teachers and faculty, that it's not that they're, whether they associate it with Common Core yet or not, they're not happy with the SBAC. And so you may get some support from teachers in saying, hey, we want this, we want there not to be such a high stakes environment for you to be educating our kids in. So you may get some more teachers on board if you approach it that way. Someone asks, how can we best help you? What would you like to see the general public doing to help?
Right now, the direction we need to head is making sure that we get the right officials elected. As long as we have the people, particularly the governor and some of those in place who like Common Core, there's not a lot we can do about it. We need to make sure that we get the right individuals in those positions who will support removing ourselves from the SBAC and the Common Core standards and education reform.
And I would say, just tell people about it. Inform yourself about what the Common Core standards and these tests really are. I think it's important for parents to understand what a psychometric test really is, and ask yourself, is that what we want in the schools? Do we want it to be like what's in the businesses where we're trying to direct our students' path and kind of narrowing things down? You'll hear a lot about individualized learning plans, which sounds great until you recognize that it's going to be in conjunction with the data that they glean from this test, and they're going to start deciding where your child's proficiencies are. And I would ask all of us to consider what we were good at in grade school. Is that what we loved? And it is what we ultimately decided that's what we wanted to become. Our kids are going to have these added pressures of pursuing paths that aren't necessarily what they love, but what a dietitian somewhere has decided is what they're good at. And so inform yourself of what these different things mean, so that when you're talking to people, you can explain why you do not like it and why you're opting out.
Also, if you haven't signed the petition that's on our website, idahoansforlocaleducation.com, please go there and sign the petition. The more people we have with their signatures on that, the more weight it carries. And it is important that the officials at the State House realize that we do have a large grassroots movement against this.